everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into what is honestly a massive economic paradox. It's a real head-scratcher. Indonesia is growing fast, but its currency, it's taking a serious hit. So we're going to unpack a recent analysis by Bindix Investasi that claims to expose the hidden forces and potentially even sabotage that's moving our money right now. Okay, so we've got to start with this massive anchor point right here, 5.5%. Think about that for a second. While other parts of the world are literally flirting with recession, Indonesia's gross domestic product is just booming. By all the traditional rules of economics, business is great, the economy is expanding, and the overall story is one of really positive, robust growth. But here's where we hit a massive roadblock. This is the core mystery we really need to figure out today. Why on earth is the rupiah steadily losing ground to the US dollar? I mean, if the engine is revving, why is the car rolling backwards? How can a currency just plummet while the broader economy is actively growing? As the source points out, this just doesn't add up on the surface. To really get how strange this is, the Bindix Investasi analysis contrasts today's reality with the 1998 Asian financial crisis. Treason. Back then, a weak currency made perfect logical sense, right? Inflation was sky high and the country was in a deep, deep recession. But today, totally different story. Indonesia is experiencing this massive boom in coal and nickel exports. And here's the kicker. Those exports are paid for in US dollars. Logically, with billions in USD pouring in, foreign exchange reserves should be climbing, and that should strengthen the rupiah. Yet, we're seeing the exact opposite. Which brings us to part one of the analysis, the liquidity drain theory. If wealth is pouring into the country, where exactly is all that money going? Well, the source has a pretty provocative answer, and it's a strong word, sabotage. They're claiming capital is being intentionally redirected. To wrap our heads around this, we need to look at M0, or base money. You can basically think of M0 as the actual physical cash in the pockets of everyday citizens. So while those top-level GDP numbers look absolutely fantastic on paper, the source claims that this specific grassroots pool of money is mysteriously drying up. So where is that everyday liquidity going? The analysis asserts this highly debated theory that public funds are essentially being funneled upwards to institutional levels. The claim here is that instead of banks lending money out to fund vital things like small businesses, toll roads, or schools, they're actually taking the lazy route. They park their capital with the central bank in instruments like SRBI just to earn risk-free passive interest. Basically, the banks get to sit back and collect interest, leaving the public starved for credit and basing an economy where just covering daily expenses gets harder and harder. Moving on to part two, the minimum wage trap. Let's look at how this creates a pretty dangerous economic cycle. Naturally, this lack of cash leads to a lot of frustration. We've seen this with the recent protests from teachers and workers demanding higher minimum wages to match the skyrocketing cost of living. And honestly, it makes total sense. But the source argues this actually triggers a really dangerous trap. Here's how they lay it out. Step 1, the prices of goods go up. Step 2, workers naturally demand higher salaries to survive. Step 3, to meet those demands, the money supply is artificially increased. And then step 4, injecting more money into the system without matching economic output just causes inflation to rise all over again. The video compares fighting inflation by simply raising wages to the economic equivalent of a dog chasing its own tail. All right, part 3, dividing the responsibilities. Let's talk about who is actually to blame for this mess. People are incredibly angry right now, for sure. But according to the source, they're often pointing fingers at the wrong institutions. The video draws a really hard line on who is responsible for what. Over on one side, you've got President Prabowo and the central government. Their job is to foster economic growth and manage the real economy. That includes dealing with our heavy reliance on imports like soybeans, wheat, and petrol, all of which, by the way, require US dollars. But on the flip side, the strict mandate to control inflation and actually stabilize the currency valuation, the source emphasizes that this falls squarely on the central bank. Basically, blaming the president solely for a weak rupiah ignores how monetary policy actually works. That leads us to part 4. A defensive investment strategy, how the source suggests building a sabotage-proof plan. Now, the source makes a pretty terrifying prediction here. The exchange rate could soon hit 20,000 rupiah to $1 US. With a forecast like that, your very first instinct might be to just go out and panic buy dollars. But the source issues a super stark warning. Don't do it. Hoarding dollars actually accelerates the collapse of the national currency. And surprisingly, beyond just hurting the local economy, the video argues that hoarding dollars is actually a terrible investment strategy right now anyway. So why is it a bad investment? Well, because the US dollar itself is losing its purchasing power globally. Fiat paper money is viewed as the absolute weakest link in this current environment. Instead of paper, the source strongly advises pivoting to tangible assets, things you can physically hold in your hand. Precious metals, like silver, are highlighted as a much stronger store of value. But the absolute strongest assets to hold during this anomaly, at least according to the video, are industrial metals. To put that into perspective, just look at this specific data point. The price of nickel didn't just rise, it absolutely exploded from $14,000 up to $19,000 a ton. While paper money is playing this constant tug of war with inflation and central bank policies, tangible commodities, the stuff the real world actually needs to manufacture things, are seeing massive price appreciation. This perfectly illustrates exactly why the source believes industrial metals are the ultimate defensive hedge right now. We've traced this whole anomaly today, from a booming GDP down to the reality of the minimum wage trap, all pointing toward tangible assets as a shield. So, the ultimate question is this. Based on everything we've unpacked, are you still relying on paper fiat, or are you building true, tangible resilience in your portfolio?
Let's dive right into this explainer. We're breaking down the economic impact of the free nutritious meal program.
The source tackles a massive burning question right off the bat. Is this Q1 economic growth actually real?
Absolutely. The data suggests this 5.6% growth is totally real, driven directly by MBG.
The analysis draws a sharp contrast here: top-down elite megaprojects versus bottom-up grassroots spending. It argues that traditional megaprojects, like building a capital on planet Neptune, mainly just enrich top oligarchs. On the flip side, the MBG program supposedly flows trillions straight to everyday grassroots workers and local vendors.
But wait, here's a huge point. Shouldn't we just fund education instead of handing out free meals?
Well, the core argument is that pouring money into education is useless if the kids are literally starving. The author frankly states that even 200 years of tutoring won't help a stunted child learn. It's a grim reality check. In many of these regions, high schoolers can't even solve 8 times 8. In places like North Kalimantan and Papua, kids are actually skipping school to farm just to survive. Take this heartbreaking anecdote from North Bengkulu. One small chicken thigh divided among several people. It's severe poverty. The source bluntly suggests critics who call MBG useless have probably never experienced true, painful hunger themselves. But the analysis takes a sharp pivot here, heavily criticizing alleged budget waste in implementing the MBG program. Dropping billions on totally unrelated items like laptops and socks for MBG kitchens, they call it incredibly brainless. In fact, calculations show that these NBG kitchens can naturally break even in just 2 years. Which brings us to another critical question. Do the teachers themselves actually need these free meals too?
Absolutely, yes. The source notes that tons of severely underpaid teachers desperately rely on this basic food assistance.
Despite massive education budgets, it warns that many teachers simply lack the core skills to teach effectively.
But honestly, you can't demand genius results when a teacher's salary is a mere 200,000 rupiah.
To fix this mess, the author advocates for a strict balance between a teacher's qualifications, workload, and salary. Ultimately, they insist that mandatory recertification for literally all educators is an absolutely necessary step forward. So, can this massive grassroots program actually eradicate stunting while totally rebuilding the economy from the ground up?